Hi, everybody. Welcome to our October 3rd Thursday meeting of the R&D Committee of the BC Wine Grape Council. We have a very busy harvest happening all around us. So if you've been able to take a little bit of time, thank you. Today we have Mehdi Sharifi presenting. You know him from the Summerland Research and Development Center, and he's known as Mr. All Things Groundcover. And today he's going to present on groundcover management and sustainability in European vineyards. So welcome, Mehdi. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Kelly, for the introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to join us today. I'm gonna turn off my camera because seeing myself, it's kind of distract me. So that way we can have just the presentation here and you can see the slides. All right. So title of presentation, Ground Cover Management and Sustainability in European Vineyards, Insight from the GiESCO 2025 conference. Next, I go to the next. Okay, so what to expect today to hear in this presentation? Well, I should say I'm not a European and I haven't lived in Europe and I don't know German language. So if I pronounce something wrong, I apologize because I tried, but might be, I know people are from Europe here that they grow up in Europe and they know the language. So please feel free to correct me if I say something wrong or if there is something in the culture that I don't know it, and you probably can help us to clear that. But what I'm going to tell you today is, so I attended this conference. I had opportunity to go to the 2025 GiESCO conference, which I'm going to tell you what GiESCO is. And it was in Germany. I've been in Germany a few times before, but mainly in the big cities. And I wasn't very excited, to be honest, to go there because big cities are big city. Everywhere is there, look like the same, but going to the conference. And when I went to the conference, I actually very impressed with the region. It was like more rural area, gorgeous, beautiful landscape. I'm going to show you the pictures. And as soon as I got there, I got this feeling of, oh, this is nice. And I would like to take more pictures and show it when I go back to the colleagues and also to the industry if they're interested. So I ended up taking 966 pictures. Then I had a hard time to even downloading those to my computer. It took me a day or so. But anyway, so I got there, I got excited, I took pictures. I tried to capture everything in that conference because this is one of the best conferences. I go every 2 years. There's such a nice mix of industry, researchers, viticulturists, just people, random people that are interested in the wine. There's someone, a friend of me that I met it a few times in this conference, coming from Brazil, and he is and he works in the aerospace. He's retired. He was a university professor doing like aerospace physics, very famous, lots of publication, not in the wine, but then he have like a little vineyard and he always come to these conferences, and very interesting person. And this time he actually bring me a bottle of wine from his vineyard all the way. And I really appreciate it. It was really, really nice. So anyway, so this is a report from visiting this wine growing center or region, sorry. So it is more visual. So don't focus on the data. There's no data. It is just like more a visual journey. And something else I would like to really show is the cultural landscape of wine. So how the wine and viticulture interwoven in the culture in that region, which was very interesting. And then some examples of the vineyard management in the region. And that was me walking in the vineyards and walking in the region and taking pictures, random pictures and so on. And then in the conference, surprisingly, I saw many presentations in the vineyard floor management, which made me excited because I know about it. So I started asking questions, and then everyone is just saying, "Oh, who's this person asking so many questions about the vineyard floor management?" So eventually, that ended up that the president of the GiESCO come to me and say, "Hey, you seems to know about the vineyard floor management and there's so much interest." I said, yeah. And I told him that I like to start an international working group because of the challenges that we have in the vineyard floor management. And I saw that this is common everywhere, is not just us. So he agreed, and I submitted a proposal to the GiESCO to have this international group established. And I contacted everyone who had something in the internationally on the floor management and asked them to join that. So we're working on that. So that would be something interesting to see how that's going to turn out. In these slides, that is my pictures from the conference, I would like you to see the plant species that have been used, because we're always interested in the new plant species and see, oh, in the other parts of the world, what they do really. Are they very similar to us? They're very different. What they do for floor management? Which kind of species they use? Do they do under vine cover crops or alleyways, or how they manage it? So some kind of feeling of that. And then Kate asked me if I can talk a little bit about the winter cover crops, because that's the time of planting winter cover crops in this region. So I'm going to have one slide about it. So GiESCO, what is that? GiESCO, weird name. It's actually international groups of international experts on viticultural system for the cooperation. It started in France. In 2007, it got approved. 2009 is officially kind of started operating, and then the conferences are every 2 years, bring together. So the primary purpose of GiESCO is to promote viticulture at an international and regional level. Every time it is in a different country or different continent. The next one is in Brazil. The one after that is going to be in China. And it's kind of promote in terms of the viticulture, in terms of scientific, technological progresses in a multidisciplinary and cooperative spirit. So very, very interesting conference. If you ever find a chance, I highly recommend that you join this conference and enjoy it. And there are two other organizations I would like to. So when you go to the GiESCO, you see the presence of these two organizations at the GiESCO. One is International Organization of Wine and Wine, which is an intergovernmental body of that developed global science technical standards and guidance for the wine and wine sector. And then we have International Viticulture and Enology Society, which is a non-profit academic association. And it has, if you go to their website, they have a lot of publications, public technical reviews. They have conference series. So this conference, the short papers published already there in their website. Very nice. And they invite all these different associations across the world to join them with a manageable amount of money. And then you can get so many benefits, and you can use the resources that they have and so on. So this is something to think about it. The conference was in a region in Germany that called the Rhodesium and Rhine. So from the name, you can say it's probably close to the Rhine River. And yes, it is. And you can see in the left picture, it is west of Germany. And then in the right picture, you see it's about an hour, that red kind of area that shows here. This is the Rhine River is coming from the left to the right. And this is Frankfurt, which is the big city in the west. And we flew here, and then we had 1 hour of the train to go to the Rhodesian. And the conference was at the Geisenheim University, which is like very close to the Rhodesian. The region is very interesting region. So I read a little bit about the history of the region when I was there, and how the Rhine River or Rhine River Valley is important in terms of the economy, in terms of the viticulture, in terms of the tourism, very, very important. And then just reading through these kind of historical notes, it says this region, the civilization started from 2,500 years ago, and viticulture or grape wine introduced to the region by the Romans. And that was 2,000 years ago. And then start flourishing in that region because the environment was suitable, the water was accessible, people were interested in that. And in the present days, it is a very touristic area from across the Europe, across the world. People, they go there, spend time and enjoy the landscape and everything else, and everything is about the grape and wine and lots of history. So these pictures of the historical site in there, and it's a very small village. It's about like 10,000-11,000 people living in this particular area. It's called Rhodesian, and they said many of these historic sites during the World War II, they damaged and they're gone. So we don't see those ones, but there is quite a bit of history in the region. And then what I really love, and I saw that more there, a little bit less here, unfortunately, is that blend of culture and wine and grapes everywhere. So everywhere you go, you see the pictures, you see the names, Riesling, you see the vineyards are in the town. Is not separate, that town is one area and vineyards. They're all like blended together. And then they have this cable cable cars that you can sit and you can go up, and then you can see it from the top of the hill. You can see very beautiful view. In the hotel, you see everything is about the grapes, all the signs and the room name. You see under that the wine grape leaves and everything. So it's quite something, and it's quite interesting. And that's why the area is very famous. I'm just trying to remember the acreage under the grape. I think it was like 27,000 hectares. I might be wrong, but this is what I remember. So just walking in the area, I took some pictures, and you see how close are the vineyards to the town. And you see in the alleyways, usually there is a cover, something. And this, the white color, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more, are wild carrots, they called. It's, you can see in the alleyway they're growing. And steep slopes. This is another characteristics of this region. And then when you're looking at the landscape and some of these steep slopes, if they don't have any cover, then you see the sign of erosion. So this gravel, the white things that you see in the alleyway in the right picture, that's the sign of erosion that, well, it is a steep slope. They get the rain is about 600 millimeter per year. So it's a little bit more humid than where we are now here. So it can wash the soil down the hill if they're not protected. In some areas, they have these stone wall terraces, which is kind of break the slope and make it a little bit more manageable, so less erosion, but not a lot. And at some point, they told me that there was a lot of terraces, but then in order to make the work easier for the field work, and they turned those to the vertical rows or vineyards. Just again, walking and looking at the vineyards from the top, you see these different colors. In the left picture, you see really light leaf colors in one block. The other blocks are darker. And this seems look like the soil is kind of depleted and maybe due to the erosion or whatever, but there's less nutrients, and it could be iron deficiency or nitrogen deficiency from this distance that they look pale. Again, areas that bare soil look like the soil is washed. And you see quite a bit of this magnesium deficiency. And you might have seen a grape is very sensitive to the magnesium, and magnesium deficiency symptoms look like this. The leaves or the leaves, they get yellow, but intervinal yellowish. So it is very different than iron. So you have these, and then I asked people and they said, yes, magnesium deficiency is quite common, but some people, they mistaken that with iron deficiency. And the soils are really calcareous, high pH, so there might be competition between calcium and magnesium causing this, this deficiency. Another picture of that wild carrot, which is called actually Queen Anne's lace, and it's native to the Europe and it grows in the grassy, rocky area in the vineyard. You see quite a bit of that. If they don't till it or spray it, then you see that. Spraying, very, very limited. Absolutely, in that region, I did not see. And they said, we have to cover the ground. This is like the policy, I think, of the government or their associations, that, and their wine was cultivated, alleyways, no cultivation, and sometimes cover crops, sometimes the spontaneous native plants are growing there, and then they mow it and maintain. Again, you see here some of the pictures of the steep slopes and some of these native grasses or herbs that they're growing in the alleyways. This is another example of they manage it. So under wine is cultivated, alleyways, grass growing. Might have been perennial ryegrass, I can't tell for sure, but definitely in some other, every other row there was radish, tillage radish growing there in the mix, and pretty good establishment. The good thing about tillage radish is it grows really fast and is established good if you plant it at the right time. So they like cooler climate. If they get into the middle of the summer, they bolt, and then they don't have the roots that they should, and they can break the compaction, and alleyways in the vineyards always compacted. So that's a good thing. Another picture of the landscape. And then this very kind of impressive building is called the Hillgard, and built in 1904. Of course, a religious building, and the nuns currently, at the time, there was like 14 nuns from Portugal moved here, and they start practicing and dedicated themselves to their religion. And then now it's 50 nuns living there, and they're teaching people. Is a center of art. People, they go there, they get kind of the faith educations there for a period of time. So still very, very active, and and then you see the vineyards are all around it. So it's actually how the vineyards belongs to this building or church. And then the conference started. So I got there like just the day before, and I had those walks and exploring the region. And then the conference started in the Geisenheim University. 350 international people attended the conference, and many presentation every day started. And, you know, Germans, they organized it so packed. It was like unbelievable number of presentation per day, which I have never seen it in any conferences in the past 20 years that I'm going to 1 or 2 conferences every year or more. But it was like starting from 7:30 in the morning all the way to the 7 at night, exhausting so much. And I asked them why you put so many presentation per day and no time to see the the posters and so on, and they said this is norm here. We always do that. So apparently they have more energy than us, but it was interesting. And this was my poster. So I have a poster presentation as a result of 3 years of study, cover cropping, looking at the nitrogen. And I tried to put the poster together more colorful and attractive than the standard posters. So I spent quite a bit of time making that to this shape, which I got some positive feedback from the people who saw that. So, and it's about soil mineral nitrogen dynamic in cover crop vineyards. So we had 2 cover crops, one down in Oliver, one down up in West Kelowna. Different soil texture. One is very sandy, one is a little bit more silty, heavier texture soil. We put the cover crops in alley, in the under vine, and we look at the nitrogen every year. So before cover crops, and then 3 years after the cover crops, every year we measure it in the fall, and then we look at the data. And what I see is that the cover crops under the vine, they impacting the soil nitrogen more, especially in the sandy soil. If I had so that sandy soil, which was like covered vineyard down in Oliver, very, very sandy, and cover crop make a difference. So I can see the nitrogen is changed. And if I have a legume, I can see that's way more nitrogen there. In general, the nitrogen was low because it's organic, they're not fertilized, but I can see very easily significantly nitrogen higher when I have the clover versus when I have the grasses. And under vine, more important. So under vine, which is less paid attention in the past, now is getting the traction, because if the vineyards want to move to more sustainable or organic, even if not organic, biodynamic, and some kind of sustainable management, they try to not to use the herbicide under the vine, which was a normal practice in the past. Everybody was using it. Not to use that. And when you don't use that, you have only 2 options. One, cultivated, which is going to burn the little organic matter that you have especially in our soils, with low organic matter of 1% or less than 1%. Or you can plant the cover crop, but you have to choose your cover crop, right? Not to compete. If you have the cover crop, then it's going to compete with the weeds, and then you have. So there are different options for the cover crop, annuals versus perennials, and so on. I'm not going to get to the details of science of that. But then this is what I presented, that we see the differences, particularly in the sandy and the irrigated vineyards, and we can see the clover make a difference. And having sometimes mixture of clover with something else, it's even better. So we saw that in the alleyways, that didn't have any effect on the wine grape. And I write the paper on this, and I just need a day or so to focus on that and submit it. So there's way more detail in that paper and more recommendations of how to manage to get a better nitrogen dynamics in the vineyards, especially in the organic vineyards when you're doing the cover crop. So recent years, you see like quite a bit of, I need to go faster because I don't have much time, but a lot of considering using the cover crops in the vineyards by the vineyard manager, by the researchers, and so on, and using that as a tool to reduce agrochemicals. So that means herbicide and nitrogen fertilizer. Also disturbance means tillage, less tillage, the better, and improve the environmental sustainability, biodiversity, attracting beneficial insects, and so on. But the issue is that this is not really old, especially under vine cover cropping. And sometimes there's lack of expertise, sometimes lack of experience, not much literature. If you look at the literature, the data is not there. Standards, everybody doing things differently, especially looking at the researchers. Some of the presentation you see, they went and they weeded with the hand. So to get the established the cover crop that they planted, which is not what we should do, and we should let it to naturally compete with the weeds. And if they can't, then they're not good option. Anyway, these are the reasons that I suggested that we need to get together internationally and have like a working group to work on these issues and to share our experience and learn from that. And then talking to people over there, they have no idea. So they always had issue with the establishment, how to establish cover crops, because it's uncertainties. It's dependent on the weather, the soil, the management. And when I talk to them about the nurse crop or companion crop, many of them, they never heard of it because they're coming from the viticulture background. It is a very common concept in the forages, not in the viticulture. So I found that, oh, there is a gap in knowledge. And when I come back, I sit like a week or so and maybe more than that, and write a paper, a review paper on use of these companion crop in the viticulture. And it's actually went and reviewed and published now. So we have that paper out as a result of this. I'm motivated by the conference and seeing the gap in the knowledge. Anyway, so presentation from different countries, many presentation from Germans. It's kind of lead into this sustainability, ground cover management in the vineyards. So a lot of emphasis on that. See picture on the left, the presentation showing these underwine cover crop that use, and I have the list of those here. They used red fescue, wild thyme, black medic, and a mixture of chamomile, poppy, and flax. And then they look at the different aspects to see, okay, does it affect the yield? Does it affect which parameters they affect? I have experience with the red fescue, very hard to establish it, very slow growing. Wild thyme, same thing. Black medic in Canada, I think it is invasive species. So, but it is nice. I like the black medic. Hunts especially like it. And then with poppy, chamomile, and flax, I don't have a lot of experience. But what they recommended, they said red fescue and herb mix, which is that chamomile, poppy, and flax, they suppress the weeds pretty good, and they lower the bunch rot, which is an issue in that particular region. And this is from University of Bonn. Some posters, they're looking at, and this is in a Swiss study, they look at the black medic, underwine, downy broom, which is actually invasive for us, is the cheatgrass. We don't want it at all. So that's a problem for us. And then thyme leaf sandwort, which is I'm not familiar with that one. They planted underwine and look at the effect of those on, again, various aspects of the vineyard. So the title, it says under row, low competitive herbaceous covers, a sustainable alternative to the herbicide. The purpose was that to see if they can reduce the pressure from the herbicide or not using herbicide, the pressure from the weeds, if they can suppress the weeds. So they had kind of some limited success in doing that using the mixture of the broom. Another study from Australia, it is like a 4-year study. I talked to the person, Cassandra Collins, a very good researcher seems to, and underwine and between the rows, investigating the sustainable floor management in vineyards. The climate was very similar to us, 500 millimeter precipitation, so a little bit more precipitation than what we have here. And then the challenges that she was talking about is very similar to what we have. Vineyard floor management influence wine health, great quality, long-term sustainability, balance between the weed control, soil health, and ecosystem is crucial, and shift toward less agrochemical use, soil disturbance, disruption, but reducing the competition. So the concern is always, okay, I'm putting cover crop under the wine. What is the chance of competition reducing the yield or yield quality? There's always a concern and a roadblock in adoption of the cover crops. So establishment of the cover crop is a roadblock, is tricky to establish. You need to know when to plant it, which species to plant it, how to manage it, as well as concern over the competition. If you don't choose the right cover crops. And then 5-year study, 4-year study, they look at the oats legume mix, and they look at the rolling versus the mowing. And then picture in the right bottom, it shows that rolling, it was actually a good practice. When they do that, they increase the carbon by like 0.3, 0.4%, which is quite a bit in 4 years. And their organic matter is low as well, is 1.7, a little bit more than us, but still low. And then the total nitrogen again increased significantly in that 4 years of cover cropping, particularly when they roll the cover crop rather than mow it, because mowing is encouraged the decomposition of the organic matter. And then the conclusion, they look at the yield on the top left, they look at the food chemistry, fruit chemistry, or quality, and they don't see much differences. So there's no sign of competition for them. And I told you that the cover crop that they used was oat and legume mix. So they planted, when you have oats, usually you plant it in the spring if you have cold winters, because it's not very, very cold tolerance. And then herbicide-free undervine and mid-row treatment increased biodiversity, biomass on the vineyard floor, no negative impact on the fruit quality, as I mentioned. And they introduced that as a tool. So a vineyard manager has a toolbox, multiple tools. Okay, how to manage everything. So you want to have a balance. And this cover crop is a tool in your toolbox. Doesn't mean you have to use it. If you need it, you use it. If you don't need it, don't use it. And when you use it, you need to know how to use that wisely and in the right way. When you have a tool, you need to know how to use it. So this is what they say. So specific to your site, so site-specific approaches for the sustainability, the cover crops are a tool to move towards that, and is important. Germans, again, they were encouraging that biodiversity in the landscape. So you probably know a lot of organic vineyards, a lot of biodynamics. Almost everywhere that we went to visit, it was either biodynamic or organic. And for them, this cultural landscape of the wine was very important. So you see in the picture, it doesn't have a high quality. My apology, my camera wasn't that good, but you can see you have this island of biodiversity on the left. People walking there, biking, so they're like, roads or pathways for people to use it and enjoy, but respect the environment. Whenever it was possible, there's like a bench for people to sit. There's trees everywhere that they can save the trees or have a tree. They have it anywhere. And I was talking to a vineyard owner, again, a big organic vineyard owner, a lot of Rieslings they had. And what he says, he said, we're not now trying to maximize our acreage. So these laying bays and stuff we put in under the natural species, we're planting natural species, and we're trying to kind of improve the biodiversity. And we think it's improving our productions by attracting the beneficial insects and so on. So you see a lot of emphasis on that. Again, here you see the pictures. The steep slopes is an issue, and I showed you the main issue is about the erosion, soil erosion. So you're losing the nutrients and you're losing the organic matter by the soil erosion. And then there's encouragement toward the terraces or terraced vineyard, and then improving biodiversity. You see in the right pictures a lot of different species growing there, and they were testing 98 species of the herbs and grasses growing in a huge experiment. And in this experiment, they have these vineyards, which was vertical arrangement, or they have terraces, modern terraces. Not the stone walls, but a different type of terraces, which is easier to manage and less costly. And they're looking at the biodiversity and biodiversity hotspots and they show that this practices improve this modern terraces improve the biodiversity of organisms. You see in the picture on the left up there that the study shows that these terrace vineyard improve the insect biodiversity and versus the vertical oriented vineyards. And you see all these different insects. And in the past, what they presented was that we had these little patches of things mixed, the forest and grassland and vineyards, they were all mixed. Now we have these pieces, big pieces of the land is only vineyards. And that kind of affected, especially on what they showed here was on the insects that, or the bees that they living in the ground. So, and picture on the right, it shows that when they switched it from the vertical vineyards or vertical managed vineyards into the terraces, the number of these ground, especially the ground bees, is increased. So they had more biodiversity in their area. A couple of other posters, they were from Germany, okay, and they're looking at under wine cover crop species. And for me, it was interesting to show you, okay, what species they were used for under wine cover crops. And in this one on the left one, they used some kind of fescue, rock fescue, and a clover, Hungarian clover. You see the picture is small, you can't see it, but the picture on the left poster on the right side on the top, you see the picture of these Hungarian clover established pretty good under wine. And then they had thyme and they had barefoot trefoil. Thyme, barefoot trefoil, both establishment is tricky. It is hard to get them established. If you can get them established, they're good. On the right side, they had these two different permanent covers, and they had this temporary. So, and this is the alleyway. So permanent versus the temporary cover crops in this particular vineyard in Germany. In the permanent cover, which is perennial crops basically, so you plant it once and they can last long. They had perennial ryegrass, fescue, red fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, and white clover. We use all of those in this region, and we know that they work. Temporary cover crops, they use annuals. So barley, canola, black oats, phacelia, and crimson clover. It's another option and mixture, relatively good. Barley, this is for alleyway, so it's not a problem. And then you have to plant it in the spring because they're not winter hardy. I see how much time I have. Okay, I'll leave a bit more time. Another, again, presentation from Italy looking at the under wine cover cropping. So you see a lot of presentation on under wine because that's something more newer, and they're trying to find a method to do that more successfully. It's a little bit more challenging than alley cover cropping. And they were using this downy hemp nettle, which I'm not familiar with that, and subterranean clover, and we used it before. And we have one site established by that, so it's pretty good. And you can see this subterranean clover, very low clover. If it's established well under wine, it's very low maintenance. You don't need to even mow it during the summer. So based on their results, they suggested there's some cover crop traits that are very useful, and we need to look into that when we know that. Water consumption. So we are in the dry irrigated vineyards. We don't need cover crops that need a lot of water. Like crimson clover needs a lot of water. So in the alleyway, it doesn't work. For under wine, it may work as a companion crop with another more permanent clover like white clover. We can mix them. Crimson clover grow really fast and then compete with the weeds and allow the other white clovers to grow, which they establish is slower to grow and establish. So that's a companion crop approach. We need the cover crops that have effective permanent soil coverage. So we need that establishment, very important, and low maintenance. And I think this might be the last one that I'm presenting. Very good study from someone, Mirko in Italy, and they look at the different ground cover strategies in the vineyards. And very nice pictures. Look at the left on the top picture. It is 3 different approaches. They had spontaneous vegetation, so let it to grow, whatever is growing there, and just mow it, maintain. Have an intentional cover crop, so grow cover crop, and then you manage it. Or plant the cover crop into the weeds or the native species that you already have there, and then modify the spontaneous vegetation. So this is called modified spontaneous vegetation, which I like it, and I did it this year in one of the vineyards. So no-till planted into the ground cover crop, and then we're gonna monitor that and see how that works. And this kind of like a recipe architecture of what works where and which kind of mixture. If on the right picture you see the roots are so different and the growth rate and the height is very different, so you can have also a kind of assembly of different species that Dr. Dave Ensing and one of our master students is working, Jesse, you probably met, working on that part, that to learn it and understand this assembly of different species, different time of the growing season. And if we can kind of modify that to get the most benefit out of it. And then these guys, they use the rye, they use some kind of beans, broad beans, and then use the mixture of the rye and beans in the alleyways. And then they had a tilled alleyway to kind of compare. Again, organic vineyard. They hadn't had a lot of results, but they said they're gonna, it is in the 3 regions of Italy. And then they looking at the identification of the native species and then dividing those with the fibrous root, tap root, and then other criteria like carbon, sulfur, nitrogen, seed mass, and so on. So they want to understand the native species that they're already growing in the vineyards. And when they understanding, then they can start having a plan to modify that to get the maximum benefit. This is that large vineyard that I talked to you is an organic vineyard. We tasted their wine, very expensive, like 60, 70 euros of bottle Riesling. To me, it was very sour because I don't drink a lot of Riesling, but very nice. The vineyard's very good. The 2 brothers were managing that, one in the viticulture, one marketing and the wine side. And picture in the right, the bottom, you see that these yellowish color, which he told me that this is iron deficiency, and he might be right. Iron deficiency here. You see that like one patch is really yellow, hugely impacted the wines. And he thinks it was due to the weather. So the changes in the weather, if it's cool spring and cold and wet, you may get into the iron deficiency due to the solubility of iron in the soil. And I don't know why they didn't spray iron on the plants. But then he said they're not going to get it every year, but they see that is an issue. And then they said their normal practice is that they go and they seed every other row, and then they switch it the next year. So on the top picture on the left, you see that one row is planted and one row hasn't planted. And at the time was early still, that was started germinating. Or in the bottom picture again, you see that something with a more permanent grass cover versus what they just planted. And the rows narrower than what we have here, 2 meters wide. Between the plants on the row, it was like 75 centimeter to 1 meter. So we're very compact, like intense planting in the region. And they have the equipment that can go between these narrow rows. And I've seen one of my colleagues in Nova Scotia tried this more kind of intensive vineyards. So this is what they do. And then we went to University of Geisenheim tour that they took us to a few of their experiments that they had. And one of the famous experiments that they have, they're looking at the climate change. So these round things that you see, they're in the circle established in a large area of the vineyard, not too large, but a substantial area. They produce CO2 in different rates. So this is kind of simulating that if we, in the next 20, 30, whatever years, we get higher CO2 in the air, what's going to happen in the vineyard? How it's going to be the effect on the soil, the ground cover, the wine itself, the yield and yield quality. Multi-million-dollar projects, and they sponsored, different companies sponsored it. And it's one of the kind, I think that's what they were telling us. So they're looking at the CO2, and they're also looking at on the left bottom page, you see they also measure the nitrous oxide emission. So emission from the ground, how that's going to impact. So it was an interesting project. Another couple of interesting projects here on the left, you see they have the grapes on a slope, and then they had these lysimeters that they measure the nitrogen in the groundwater, not the groundwater, sorry, the water that coming down the hill, and they quantify that in order to have a strategy, reduce the leaching of the nutrients. And then on the right, they had these interesting plan, a garbage bin that they put a window on the side of it, and then they can observe the roots. So it's a more root growth study that they had, but it was an interesting kind of area they had. And that's a picture of at the end of the conference we had, and a drink with the Brazilian friends that they're gonna organize the next conference in 2027. And very interesting, in Brazil, they have 3 main areas of wine growing. One area, they have 2 harvests per year. They have the juice, wine juice, and they have an area that is more mountain, very similar to what we have here. Very, very kind people. A picture from our station. We had this underlying cover crop of Ladino white clover. Very good establishment this year. So what I did, after every 2 years, we were replanting the clover because it starts getting patchy and the weeds start crawling into that. But this year we didn't do it. We went and we overseeded it in April. So just broadcast some seed on top using a grass seeder that you do your lawn, and you see that they came back really, really good. The picture is from August. This is the paper I published in Companion Crops. It is available online for free. So you can access it if you're interested to read a little bit more about this companion cropping. And then looking at the winter cover crops for our region, I took a look. I put some species together. Of course, we all know cereal rye, very successful in the fall, or fall rye. Very successful, very cold tolerance, -34, zone 7. And you do planting, you can do it from August to October, late October. So a good window for us, allow us to put it. And I think anywhere that nothing is growing, the cereal rye is going to grow. And it allow you to accumulate a little bit of carbon in the soil and sequestrate a little bit of carbon. And then over time, then you're going to have enough carbon in the soil that you can start trying other species. So this could be like a starting point, and then over time you can switch it to mixtures or other species. Triticale, which is mix of wheat and cereal rye, less cold tolerance, but still quite a bit, -29. Some of the clovers, Alsiki clovers, quite cold tolerant, and red clover as well. Red clover, I have a lot of experience with that in Ontario and in Nova Scotia over winter, even in that kind of really cold climate, very good over winter. White clover, similar, and Dutch white clover especially is the most famous one. Winter wheat, less, -23. Australian winter wheat, very dry, again, cold tolerance -23. So I did planted some winter cover crop this year in some of the vineyards, 2 vineyards in Oliver and also in Osoyoos. We planted mix of Australian pea and cereal rye. So hopefully we have a good stand of that. And in the spring they grow, and then we can control it before the maximum need of the grapevine nitrogen needs requirement of the grapevine, and that reduce also competition. And you can plant something else after that. But again, for the vineyards that are very, very sandy, the soil is not very fertile, alleyways, we can capture this moisture in the fall and in the spring by this cover cropping, and then without need to changing our irrigation system, over irrigating and so on for the cover crops, you can have some organic matter, maybe sometimes a good amount of organic matter coming from this cereal rye, and maybe mixing that with the winter pea and get this organic matter accumulated in your soil over time. Annual ryegrass, again, cold tolerance, it could be as a winter cover crop. Canola has some cold tolerance, -15. Crimson clover, much less, -12. Probably won't overwinter. Tillage radish, we tried it multiple times, it doesn't overwinter. But then if you plant it early in the fall, like in August, then you're going to have a good organic matter by the end of the fall when it's kind of froze. This is again one of the pictures that I show in the paper, and the concept is that, so we're living in a cold climate, precipitation is low, precipitation in the fall and spring is a little bit higher, and we can take advantage of that in the very sandy soil, take advantage of this fall cover crop seeding and the spring control of this cover crop, and then in the summertime, whatever grow, and if not, then you just do it again in the fall, plant it, and then by the time it is dry in the summer, May or June, they will terminate naturally, and then over time you accumulate carbon by this practice. And if you roll it, is even better. So rather than so you can go in May or June and you can roll it in June, maybe early June, and then you have a live mulch on the ground that can be really useful. The other option is to use a permanent cover crop, more perennial, and then establish it once, and then it would be persistent, but you need some level of irrigation in the alleyway, overheads maybe, some irrigation once per week to get it going, that permanent during the summertime, and use the drought tolerance, of course. And then it's going to overwinter and it's going to come back. And every 2-3 years, then you need to overseed it or you need to reseed it because it will start getting patchy. So that's another strategy.
Hey, Mehdi,
That's it.
here's
Finished.
hey, perfect.
There you go. I knew it.
Yeah, Mehdi asked me for a 5-minute bell. So yeah, that's perfect.
Thank you.
It sounds like you were captivated by Germany.
It was interesting, yeah.
Was it your first time to Germany?
No. I've been there, like, this was the 3rd time.
Oh, that was super interesting. And I have a lot of grower friends who ask me about cover crop all the time. And this recording is going to be a really good thing to point them to, I think.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thanks again. I'm going to turn things over to Kate, who has some updates for next month. And yeah, well, take it away, Kate. You're muted.
Yes, of course, mute. Thanks, Mehdi, for the presentation. That was actually really inspiring and a lovely thing to watch over like a lunch and learn. So you took us away to Germany, and I think that was really, really nice. In terms of our R&D committee for November, we are going to forego our virtual third Thursday in lieu of Grape Day coming up at UBC. And so this is a co-hosted event between AAFC, University, British Columbia, and the Okanagan, and the BC Wine Grape Council. It's open to all members, and we're hoping to get some new, fresh energy into the R&D committee. If anybody that you know is interested in participating in the R&D committee or hearing about research that is being supported by the BC Wine Grape Council and also happening at AAFC and UBC, we encourage people to come out and hear updates. There'll be some lunch and yeah, just kind of a nice opportunity for some networking. So hope to see you guys there on the 26th. And then following that, we've also received a request for BC producer survey on technology. Yep.
Do people have to register for the UBC event?
Yes, if they could register, we have been sending out links through our newsletter and our R&D emails, or they can also email me info@bcwgc.org if they can't find the links, but I can share those out as well in the follow-up email to come from this presentation. Yeah, and there's no cost, so it's a free event. And then the next thing I just wanted to highlight is this producer survey on the use of new technology. It's just being launched and administered by Kaya Analytics. Hearing from fruit and vegetable farmers on experiences and views on emerging technology, digital tools, environmental ag systems, and agrogenomics. So I just wanted to put a little plug in for that survey, and it can be accessed through the QR code here. We are also sharing this out with people via our newsletter, our R&D emails, and the follow-up email to this presentation. So hopefully you can support them in that endeavor. And it's open through till the middle of November on the 16th.
Yeah, I see there's some prizes. You know, if you win,
yes.
Yeah, you could buy more grapes. More tanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody for coming. Maybe we'll see you in person next month. Thanks again, Mehdi. And
you're welcome. Thank you.